Have you ever looked up at the stars and wondered, are we alone? It's a question that has echoed through the ages. But perhaps the more fundamental question is, why did we start asking in the first place? Today, we're journeying back in time, deep into the prehistoric mind, to explore one of humanity's most profound creations. The concept of gods. Imagine a world without cities, without writing, without science. A world lit only by the sun, the moon, and the flickering flames of a campfire. This was the world of our ancient ancestors. Their lives were a constant struggle for survival, dictated by the raw, untamed forces of nature. A sudden storm could flood their homes, a drought could wither their food source, and a lightning strike could set their world ablaze. In this unpredictable existence, a revolutionary tool was being forged within the human brain: imagination. Unlike other animals, early humans didn't just react to their environment. They began to ask why. Why does the sun rise and fall? Why do the seasons change? Why does a hunt succeed one day and fail the next? They saw agency in the world around them. The rustle of leaves wasn't just wind, it was a whisper. The roar of thunder wasn't just a sound, it was a voice. This personification of nature was a monumental leap in consciousness. By giving a face and a will to these powerful, invisibly forces, our ancestors weren't just explaining the world, they were trying to engage with it. If a powerful spirit controlled the rain, maybe they could please it. If a goddess governed the hunt, perhaps they could win her favor with offerings and rituals. This wasn't abstract theology. It was a practical strategy for survival, an attempt to bring a sliver of control to a life dominated by chaos. The first gods were not distant, ethereal beings. They were the very real powers of the sun, the earth, the storm, and the hunt. Now, let's step inside a prehistoric cave. Imagine the flickering firelight dancing on the walls, revealing incredible paintings of bison, deer, and mammoths. These weren't just decorations. Many archaeologists believe these were sacred spaces, the first temples. The act of painting these animals, perhaps with a shaman leading a ritual, was a way to connect with the spirit of the hunt. It was a prayer made with ochre and charcoal, a plea for success, a way to magically influence the outcome of their most critical task. This is where we see the birth of ritual actions performed, not for their direct physical result, but for their symbolic power to influence the divine. It's the beginning of a conversation between humanity and the gods we were just starting to imagine. But there was another, deeper fear that haunted the prehistoric mind, a mystery that no hunt or harvest could solve: the chilling finality of death. They saw their loved ones grow still and cold. They felt the profound emptiness of their absence. Where did they go? Was this truly the end? This existential dread was perhaps the most powerful catalyst for religious thought. The human mind, with its newfound capacity for imagination, rebelled against the idea of non. And then, something extraordinary happened every night. They slept, and they dreamed. In their dreams, the dead returned. They spoke, they walked, they hunted alongside the living. These dreams felt incredibly real. For the prehistoric mind, this wasn't a hallucination. It was proof. It was evidence that a part of a person, a spirit, a soul, continued to exist after the body had perished. This was a revolutionary idea. It suggested that death was not an end, but a transition to another place, in an invisible spirit world that coexisted with their own. This belief in an afterlife transformed everything. It comforted the grieving and gave meaning to loss. The ancestors weren't gone. They were just in another realm, watching over the tribe. This led to ancestor worship, one of the earliest and most widespread forms of religion. Funerals became elaborate rituals, not just to dispose of a body, but to ensure the spirit's safe passage to the other side. People would bury their dead with tools, food, and ornaments, everything they might need in the spirit world. These graves are our earliest evidence of a belief in immortality, a dream born from the fear of death and nurtured by the nightly theater of our dreams. As human societies grew more complex, so did their gods. When small hunter-gatherer bands evolved into larger agricultural tribes, their deities evolved with them. The focus shifted from the spirit of the hunt to the gods of the harvest, the sun and the rain, deities who controlled the fertility of the land. When these tribes grew into city-states and empires, their gods were organized into vast pantheons, complete with divine families, and epic dramas that mirrored the politics of the human world. Think of the Greek Olympians or the Egyptian Ennead. Gods were given specific roles: gods of war, love, wisdom, and craft. They became patrons of cities and protectors of kings. Religion became the glue that held these large societies together. It provided a shared moral code, a set of rules supposedly handed down from the heavens that governed how people should behave. It justified the power of rulers, who were often seen as divine or as the chosen representatives of the gods on earth. Grand temples were built, not just as places of worship, but as centers of economic and political power. Religion provided a common identity, a shared story that united thousands of strangers under a single banner. From the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the pyramids of Egypt, we see how the architecture of faith became the architecture of civilization itself. So, when we ask why humans created gods, the answer is as complex and multifaceted as humanity itself. It began with the spark of imagination in a world full of mystery, giving a name and a face to the terrifying and wondrous forces of nature. It was fueled by the deep, primal fear of death and the comforting promise of an afterlife, born from the vivid reality of our dreams. And it evolved, becoming a powerful social tool that explained our world, guided our morals, and bound us together into the first great civilizations. The story of how we created gods is, in essence, the story of how we became human. It's a testament to our incredible capacity for imagination, our quest for meaning, and our unending desire to find our place in the cosmos. That ancient impulse to look beyond the visible world is still with us today, whether in a temple, a laboratory, or simply in a quiet moment spent gazing at the stars. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the deep past. If you found this exploration fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the human story. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, a feeling that it's more than just rock, water, or wood. If so, you've tapped into one of the oldest human beliefs: animism. Welcome back to our channel, where today we're journeying back in time, tens of thousands of years, to explore the very dawn of spirituality. Long before grand temples and sacred texts, our earliest ancestors lived in a world that was truly alive. For them, every part of nature possessed a spirit, a consciousness. The wind wasn't just moving air. It was a spirit whispering secrets. A thunderstorm wasn't a weather phenomenon. It was the roar of a powerful sky entity. This is the core of animism, the belief that the world is inhabited by countless spirits, from the smallest pebble to the vast, starry cosmos. Imagine living in a world like that. It wasn't a place of inanimate objects to be used, but a community of living beings to be respected. Hunting an animal wasn't just a matter of survival. It was a sacred negotiation with the animal's spirit. You would offer thanks, perform a ritual, and promise that no part of the animal would be wasted. This relationship wasn't built on dominance, but on reciprocity, on a deep understanding that humanity was just one part of a much larger, interconnected spiritual web. Every action had a spiritual consequence. From this vibrant, spirit-filled world, another powerful concept emerged: the totem. A totem is a spirit being, sacred object, or symbol that serves as an emblem of a group of people, like a family, clan, or tribe. Think of it as a spiritual mascot, but so much deeper. If your clan's totem was the bear, for example, you didn't just admire bears. You believed you shared a common ancestry with them. The bear spirit was your protector, your guide, and the source of your clan's identity. Totems weren't just animals. They could be plants, geographical features, or even natural phenomena. The eagle clan might be known for its vision and freedom, while the river clan might be associated with adaptability and the flow of life. These weren't just stories. They were organizing principles for society. They dictated social rules, marriage customs, and responsibilities. The totem connected the individual to the group, and the group to the spiritual world, weaving a tapestry of meaning and belonging. It gave people an answer to the fundamental question: who are we? Alongside the spirits of nature and the totems of the clan, another group of spirits held immense importance: The ancestors. When a loved one passed away, they didn't simply vanish. Their spirit transitioned to another realm, but they remained an active and influential part of the family. They were the guardians of tradition, the keepers of wisdom, and the link between the living and the spirit world. Ancestor veneration was a way of honoring this connection. Families would make offerings of food and drink, speak to their ancestors for guidance, and invoke their names for blessings and protection. The ancestors were seen as mediators who could intercede with more powerful nature spirits on behalf of the living. They had, after all, walked the earth and understood human struggles. This practice provided comfort and continuity. It meant you were never truly alone. You were part of an unbroken chain stretching back through generations, with a responsibility to the generations yet to come. So we have a world buzzing with nature, spirits, clan totems, and watchful ancestors. But how did people communicate with these powerful, unseen forces? How did they ask for a successful hunt, a good harvest, or healing for the sick? This is where one of the most fascinating and enduring figures in human history enters the scene. The shaman. The shaman was not a priest who learned from books, but a master of spiritual ecstasy. They were men and women who possessed the extraordinary ability to journey into the spirit world. They were the bridge between the physical and the metaphysical, the walker between worlds. This wasn't a job you applied for. It was a calling, often revealed through a profound crisis, a vivid dream, or a near-death experience. It was a difficult and often dangerous path, through intense rituals often involving rhythmic drumming, chanting, dancing, and sometimes the use of sacred plants. The shaman would enter a trance state. In this altered state of consciousness, their soul was believed to leave their body and travel to the spirit realms. There, they could bargain with the spirit of a disease, retrieve a lost soul, or learn the location of scarce game animals from the spirits of nature. When they returned, they brought back not just information, but healing and balance for the entire community. The shaman was the doctor, the therapist, the diviner, and the spiritual leader, all rolled into one. They were the living heart of the community's spiritual life, maintaining the delicate harmony between the human world and the vast, invisible cosmos surrounding it. They interpreted dreams, guided souls, and reminded everyone of their place in the great, sacred dance of existence. Animism, totems, ancestor worship, and shamanism. These aren't just primitive curiosities from a forgotten past. They represent the foundational spiritual grammar of humanity. They show us a way of seeing the world not as a resource to be exploited, but as a sacred community to which we belong. These ancient beliefs remind us that for tens of thousands of years, our ancestors understood a profound truth. We are deeply connected to everything around us, living and non-living, seen and unseen. These early expressions of spirituality laid the groundwork for all the complex religions that followed. The idea of sacred places, ritual offerings, spiritual mediators, and a world beyond our senses aids, all started here, in the whisper of the wind and the beat of a shaman's drum. They are the deep roots of our collective human search for meaning, connection, and our place in the cosmos. Thank you for joining us on this journey to the dawn of belief. Ever wondered where the blueprint for civilization was first drafted? Forget what you think you know, because we're going back, way back. We're traveling to the sun-drenched plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, to the cradle of it all, Mesopotamia. This isn't just a history lesson. It's the origin story of our world, of our cities, our laws, and even our gods. The Mesopotamians looked up at the vast, unpredictable sky and saw not chaos, but a family. At the head of this divine family was the Sky Father. Imagine him not as an old man with a beard, but as the very concept of authority, the distant, silent power that set the universe in motion. He was the ultimate source of all order, the King of Kings in the heavens. His will was absolute, but he rarely interfered directly. He was the CEO, delegating the day-to-day operations to his children. And what children they were? Let's meet Enki, the god of water, wisdom, and creation. Picture a brilliant, clever, and sometimes mischievous deity. Enki was the divine engineer, the problem solver. It was his sweet, fresh waters that made the arid land fertile, allowing life to flourish. He was the patron of craftspeople, magicians, and thinkers. When humanity faced a problem, from a devastating flood to a simple irrigation challenge, it was Enki they prayed to for a clever solution. He wasn't just powerful, he was smart, and he had a soft spot for his creation, humanity. He was the god who got his hands dirty. Then there's Inanna, a goddess so complex and dynamic she practically leaps off the ancient clay tablets. Known later as Ishtar, she was the goddess of love, beauty, desire, and, paradoxically, war. She was no gentle, passive deity. Inanna was ambitious, passionate, and fierce. She could inspire the most tender love and the most brutal conflict. She represented the untamable, powerful forces of life itself, the drive to create and the drive to conquer. She was a goddess who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to go after it, descending into the underworld itself to prove her power. And Enki and Inanna weren't just characters in a story. They were the personification of the fundamental forces the Mesopotamians saw shaping their world: authority, ingenuity, and passion. So, you have these cosmic forces, these powerful gods, but how do you connect with them on Earth? How do you channel their power and maintain their favor? The answer was one of the greatest innovations in human history. The temple. Don't think of a temple as just a place of worship. In Mesopotamia, the temple, or ziggurat, was the engine of the city. These massive, stepped pyramids weren't just built to be impressive. They were designed to be a bridge between the earthly and the divine. They were literally a staircase to heaven. At the very top of the ziggurat was the holiest shrine, the dwelling place of the city's patron god. This wasn't a public space. It was the exclusive domain of priests and priestesses who acted as the god's earthly servants. The temple was the god's house, and everything within the city was, in a sense, the god's property. This idea was revolutionary. The temple became the central hub for everything. It was the bank, storing grain and wealth. It was the administrative center, organizing massive labor projects like building canals and city walls. It was the scientific observatory, where priests tracked the stars, creating calendars to guide planting and harvesting. The temple functioned as a machine for creating order out of the chaos of nature and human society. Grain from countless farms would flow into the temple storehouses. From there, priests would redistribute it as rations to laborers, artisans, and soldiers. They managed vast herds of livestock in workshops, producing textiles and pottery. This wasn't just about charity. It was about organizing society on a scale never before seen. The gods, through their earthly representatives in the temple, owned the land, and in return for humanity's service, they provided order, protection, and predictability. The temple was the beating heart of Mesopotamian civilization, pumping resources, knowledge, and authority through the city's veins. It was the physical manifestation of the divine order on Earth. But managing this complex system required a new tool. How do you keep track of thousands of sheep, countless jars of beer, and the rations for hundreds of workers? You can't just keep it all in your head. The priests and scribes of the temple needed a way to record and manage this fire hose of information. Their solution would change the world forever. It started simply: wheat pictures. A picture of a head of barley next to a number to mean a certain amount of grain. This was pictographs, but this system was clumsy. How do you draw love or authority? The breakthrough came when they started using symbols not just to represent things, but to represent sounds. This is the birth of cuneiform writing. Using a reed stylus, scribes would press wedge-shaped marks into wet clay tablets. Suddenly, they could write down anything they could say. This was a quantum leap for humanity. The first uses of writing were overwhelmingly economic lists of goods, receipts, contracts. The temple's accountants were the world's first writers, but it didn't stay that way for long. Once you can write down the flow of grain, you can also write down the stories of the gods. The oral myths of Anan, Enki, and Inanna, which had been passed down for generations, were now being codified, written in stone, or rather, clay. This had a profound effect. An oral story can change with each telling, but a written text is fixed. It becomes official. The myths were no longer just stories. They were a sacred canon. And this led to the final, crucial step. If the king rules on behalf of the gods, and the will of the gods is now written down, then the king's decrees can be written down too. The myth becomes law. The most famous example is the Code of Hammurabi. But the tradition started much earlier. Laws weren't just the whims of a powerful ruler anymore. They were presented as the implementation of divine justice, handed down from the gods themselves. Think about the power of that transition. You shouldn't steal because I, the king, say so is one thing. But you shouldn't steal because it violates the sacred order established by the gods. And here it is. Written on this stone for all to see is something else entirely. It elevates law from mere command to a cosmic principle. Writing took the abstract authority of the gods, channeled it through the economic engine of the temple, and transformed it into the concrete, unchangeable text of the law. It was the ultimate tool for social control and stability. The story of civilization, the rules we live by, began to be written down, creating a permanent record and a foundation for all future societies to build upon. From the divine family in the heavens to the bustling storehouses of the ziggurat, and finally to the wedge-shaped marks on a clay tablet, the Mesopotamians engineered civilization itself. They created a system where divine myth, economic organization, and legal authority were all woven together. They gave us the very idea of a city, the structure of law, and the technology of writing that allows me to share this story with you today. The world we inhabit is, in many ways, a world first imagined and then built by the people of ancient Mesopotamia. Their legacy isn't just in dusty museum artifacts. It's in the very foundations of our society. Today, we're journeying back thousands of years to the sun-drenched lands of ancient Egypt, a civilization that continues to captivate us with its monumental pyramids, intricate hieroglyphs, and profound beliefs. But at the very heart of this enduring legacy lies a concept so powerful it shaped their entire world: the idea of divine kingship. What did it truly mean for a pharaoh to be not just a ruler, but a living god on earth? How did myth and reality intertwine to create a power structure that lasted for millennia? Join us as we unravel the sacred tapestry of Egyptian mythology and discover how mortal kings were transformed into immortal gods. To understand the pharaoh, we must first understand the gods. And there's no story more central to Egyptian belief than the myth of Osiris. Imagine-Osiris, the benevolent god-king, who taught humanity the arts of civilization and agriculture, bringing order and prosperity to the land. He was loved by all, but his reign was cut tragically short by his envious brother, Set, the god of chaos and the desert, in a brutal act of betrayal. Set murdered Osiris, dismembered his body, and scattered the pieces across the length of Egypt. It was an act designed not just to kill a king, but to destroy the very concept of order itself. But this is not a story of despair. It's a story of devotion and rebirth. Enter Isis, Osiris's sister and wife, a goddess of immense magical power and unwavering loyalty. Heartbroken but determined, Isis embarked on a desperate quest to find every piece of her murdered husband. With the help of other deities like Nephthys and Thoth, she painstakingly gathered the fragments of Osiris. Using her powerful magic, she reassembled his body, breathing life back into him just long enough to conceive a divine heir, Horus. This miraculous act wasn't just about bringing a husband back from the dead. It was the ultimate triumph of order over chaos, of life over death. It was the primordial promise of resurrection. After this magical union, Osiris could no longer reign in the world of the living. He descended to become the king of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. But he wasn't a ruler of a dark and fearsome place. Instead, he became the just judge of the dead, offering every soul the chance at eternal life, just as he had achieved. His story became the blueprint for every Egyptian's hope for the afterlife. They believed that through proper rituals and a righteous life, they too could be identified with Osiris after death and be reborn into a paradise. Back in the mortal realm, a new chapter began. The young god Horus, son of Isis and Osiris, came of age with a singular purpose: to avenge his father and reclaim his rightful throne from the usurper, Set. The ensuing conflict, known as the contendings of Horus and Set, was an epic saga of battles, trials, and divine court cases that lasted for 80 years. It was a cosmic struggle between the legitimate heir and the chaotic usurper, between rightful order and violent disorder. Horus, often depicted with the head of a falcon, represented divine justice and the rightful continuation of the royal line. Ultimately, a tribunal of the gods declared Horus the victor. Set was subdued and relegated to his domain of the untamed desert, while Horus ascended to the throne of Egypt, uniting the divine and earthly realms under his rule. This mythological victory was the cornerstone of Egyptian kingship. Every pharaoh who came after was seen as the living embodiment of Horus on the throne. When a pharaoh ruled, he was Horus, maintaining cosmic order, or Mat, just as the falcon god had done. He was the protector of his people, the guarantor of justice, and the link between humanity and the divine. This divine connection didn't end with the pharaoh's death. Upon his passing, the king's spirit underwent another incredible transformation. Just as Horus had succeeded Osiris, the deceased pharaoh would become one with Osiris in the afterlife, ruling over the realm of the dead. He would merge with the god of resurrection, ensuring his own immortality and becoming a powerful force in the Duat. Meanwhile, his successor, the new pharaoh, would immediately assume the role of the living Horus on the throne. This cyclical transition from Horus to Osiris, from living god to divine ancestor, was a continuous, unbroken chain of divinity. It ensured that Egypt was never without a divine ruler, guaranteeing the stability and continuity of the entire cosmos. The death of a king wasn't an end. It was a sacred transition that reaffirmed the divine order of the universe. This entire belief system was reinforced through elaborate rituals and grand architecture. The coronation of a new pharaoh was a series of complex ceremonies that ritually transformed the mortal prince into the divine Horus. Temples weren't just places of worship. They were cosmic engines, where priests performed daily rituals to sustain the gods and, by extension, the pharaoh and the state. And of course, there are the pyramids and the grand tombs in the Valley of the Kings. These weren't just monuments to ego. They were resurrection machines. They were meticulously designed to facilitate the deceased pharaoh's transformation into Osiris and his ascent to the heavens, ensuring his journey to the afterlife was successful. Every block of stone, every painted relief, was a testament to this profound belief in the king's divine destiny. So, when we look at the serene, powerful face of a pharaoh's statue or the golden mask of Tutankhamun, we're not just seeing the portrait of a powerful man. We are seeing the face of a god on earth. We are witnessing the physical manifestation of a myth that gave an entire civilization its meaning, its stability, and its hope for eternity. The pharaoh was more than a king. He was the living link in a divine chain, the embodiment of Horus and the future Osiris. It was this incredible concept of divine kingship, born from the epic tale of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, that powered one of the most magnificent and enduring civilizations the world has ever known. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the heart of ancient Egypt. What part of this mythology fascinates you the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the past. Until next time, stay curious. Today, we're venturing deep into ancient India, to a time of profound spiritual inquiry that has shaped the lives of billions. We're going to explore the mystical world of the Vedas, the concept of Brahman, and the transformative ideas of karma and rebirth. This isn't just history. It's a living tradition that offers a unique perspective on the universe and our place within it. So, get comfortable, and let's unravel these ancient mysteries together. Imagine a world, over 3,000 years ago, where sacred hymns were chanted around crackling fires. This was the era of the Vedas, the oldest scriptures of Hinduism. These weren't just simple songs. They were powerful incantations, a way of communicating with the divine forces of nature. The most important of these forces was Agni, the god of fire. Fire was seen as a messenger, a bridge between the human world and the realm of the gods. Through the fire ritual, or yajna, the Vedic people offered gifts and prayers, seeking blessings like health, prosperity, and long life. The smoke rising from the fire carried their hopes and devotion upwards, connecting earth and heaven. These hymns, filled with rich poetry and a deep reverence for the cosmos, were the foundation of a spiritual quest that would only grow deeper over time. As the Vedic age progressed, some thinkers began to ask more profound questions. They looked at the many gods they worshipped, gods of the sun, the wind, the storm, and wondered, is there something more? Is there a single, underlying reality behind this incredible diversity? This quest for unity led to one of the most powerful concepts in all of human philosophy, the idea of Brahman. The Upanishads, which are the later, more philosophical parts of the Vedas, describe Brahman as the ultimate, unchanging reality. It's not a god sitting on a throne in the sky, but the very fabric of existence. Think of it like this. You see waves, currents, and foam on the ocean. They all look different, but they are all fundamentally water. In the same way, the Upanishads teach that everything in the universe, me, the stars, the trees, every living being, are all manifestations of the one, single reality of Brahman. It is the source of everything, the substance of everything, and the destination of everything. This was a revolutionary shift from worshipping many external gods to seeking one internal, all-pervading truth. The universe wasn't just created by a divine source. The universe is the divine source. This brings us to another groundbreaking idea. The God within. If Brahman is everything, then it must also be within us. The Upanishadic sages call this inner self, Atman. Atman is your individual soul, your true essence, your consciousness. And here's the most profound revelation of all. Atman is Brahman. Your individual consciousness is identical to the universal consciousness. The famous Sanskrit phrase Tattivam Asi captures this perfectly. It means you are that. You are not just a small, separate part of the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself. The feeling of being a separate me is considered an illusion, a veil of ignorance called Maya. The ultimate goal of life, according to this philosophy, is to pierce through this veil and realize this fundamental unity, to experience the truth that your Atman is one with Brahman. So, if our true nature is divine and one with the universe, why do we feel so separate? Why do we experience suffering, joy, and the endless cycle of life and death? This is where the concepts of karma and rebirth come in. Karma is often misunderstood in the West as a system of cosmic reward and punishment, but it's more like a universal law of cause and effect. Every action, every word, and even every thought you have creates an energetic imprint. Good, compassionate actions create positive karma, leading to favorable experiences, while harmful actions create negative karma, leading to suffering. It's not a judgment from a god. It's the natural consequence of your own choices, like planting a seed and watching the corresponding plant grow. This law of karma is directly tied to the idea of rebirth, or something. According to this view, the soul, or Atman, doesn't just disappear after death. It is reborn into a new body, carrying its accumulated karma with it. The life you are born into, your circumstances, your talents, your challenges, is seen as a result of your past actions in previous lives. This isn't a fatalistic doctrine. However, it's empowering. It means that while your present is shaped by your past, your future is entirely in your hands. You are constantly shaping your destiny with every choice you make right now. The goal is not simply to be reborn into a better life, but to escape the cycle of samsara altogether. How does one escape this cycle? By achieving moksha, or liberation. Moksha is the ultimate freedom that comes from realizing the truth of Tattivam Asi, the oneness of your soul with Brahman. When you fully understand and experience that you are not the temporary body or the fleeting ego, but the eternal, universal consciousness, the chains of karma fall away. Your actions no longer create new karmic debts because you are no longer acting out of selfish desire. You have woken up from the dream of separateness. This is the final goal of the spiritual journey outlined in the to break free from the cycle of rebirth and merge back into the infinite blissful ocean of Brahman, like a drop of water returning to the sea. These ideas, the cosmic fire of the Vedas, the all-encompassing unity of Brahman, the divine spark of Atman within you, and the intricate dance of karma and rebirth, formed the bedrock of Hindu thought and influenced countless other spiritual traditions, including Buddhism and Jainism. They offer a profound and coherent worldview that has guided people for millennia, providing answers to life's biggest questions. Who are we? Why are we here? And where are we going? It's a philosophy that encourages introspection and ethical living, reminding us that our actions have consequences, and that our true nature is something far grander than we can imagine. It invites us to look beyond the surface of things and find the divine unity that connects us all. Have you ever wondered where the universe came from? No, I'm not talking about the Big Bang Theory. I'm talking about a much older, much wilder story. A story filled with monsters, titans, and gods who were just as messy and complicated as we are. Today, we're diving deep into the ancient world of Greek mythology, starting with a foundational text, Hesiod's, asterisk. Theogony, imagine a world born not from a silent explosion, but from a void called chaos. From this nothingness, primordial beings emerged: Gaia, the earth; Tartarus, the deep abyss; and Eros, desire itself. Gaia, all on her own, gave birth to Uranus, the sky. And when earth and sky came together, a dynasty of powerful, often terrifying beings was born. This is the opening act of the Theogony asterisk, a cosmic family drama written down by the poet Hesiod, around 700 BC. It's not just a collection of stories. It's the ancient Greeks' attempt to bring order to the universe, to explain how everything from the mountains to the seas, from justice to strength. The first generation of gods, the Titans, were a formidable bunch, led by the cunning Cronus. His father, Uranus, was a terrible parent, hiding his children away deep within the earth. Gaia, in her distress, plotted with her youngest son. Cronus, armed with a sickle, ambushed his father and seized power. But this act of rebellion cast a long shadow. A prophecy foretold that Cronus, too, would be overthrown by one of his own children. Paranoid and desperate to keep his throne, Cronus did something truly monstrous. He swallowed each of his children as they were born. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, all consumed by their father. But history, or in this case, myth, has a funny way of repeating itself. Cronus' wife, Rhea, couldn't bear to lose another child. When her youngest son, Zeus, was born, she tricked Cronus. She wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and gave it to her husband, who swallowed it without a second thought. Meanwhile, the infant Zeus was whisked away to the island of Crete, raised in secret and destined for greatness. This is where the story really kicks into high gear. This isn't just a bedtime story. It's a profound exploration of power, fear, and the cyclical nature of conflict. The very forces that brought Cronus to Paradise Seat, and violence swore, the same forces that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Once grown, Zeus returned to challenge his father. He forced Cronus to regurgitate his siblings, now fully grown and ready for a fight. What followed was a cataclysmic 10-year war known as the Titanomachy. The new generation of gods, the Olympians, against the old guard, the Titans. Imagine epic battles shaking the very foundations of the cosmos. The Olympians, led by the strategic and powerful Zeus, eventually triumphed. They banished the Titans to the dark pit of Tartarus, and a new order was established. Zeus became the king of the gods, ruling from Mount Olympus. He divided the world with his brothers. Poseidon took the seas, and Hades took the underworld. A new age had dawned. The Theogony. Asterisk provides the family tree. But what do these gods really represent? They weren't distant, perfect beings. The Olympians were a reflection of humanity, magnified to a divine scale. They were mirrors showing us our own virtues and, more often, our vices. Think about Zeus, the king. He's a figure of justice and order, the upholder of cosmic law. But he's also famously unfaithful, his countless affairs causing chaos and drama across the mortal and divine realms. He embodies both the stability of leadership and the corrupting influence of absolute power. Then there's his wife, Hera, the goddess of marriage and family. You'd think she'd be a symbol of domestic bliss, right? Well, not exactly. She is fiercely protective of the institution of marriage, but her story is largely defined by jealousy and a relentless pursuit of vengeance against Zeus's lovers and their children. She reminds us of the pain of betrayal, and the destructive power of envy. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, isn't just about sweet romance. She represents an untamable, often dangerous passion that can lead to conflict and war. Ares is the embodiment of brutal, senseless violence, while Athena represents strategic, noble warfare and wisdom. Each god and goddess is a complex bundle of contradictions. Just like us, they love, they hate, they cheat, they protect, they create, and they destroy. They show us that strength can be paired with arrogance, and love with jealousy. They are, in essence, divinely, beautifully, and terrifyingly human. For centuries, these myths were the bedrock of Greek culture. They weren't just entertainment. They were religion, science, and morality all rolled into one. They explained natural phenomena. Thunderstorm was Zeus hurling his lightning bolts. They provided a moral framework, demonstrating the consequences of hubris or disrespect to the gods. But as Greek society evolved, a new way of thinking began to emerge. Some people started asking different kinds of questions. Questions that the myths couldn't quite answer. Around the 6th century BC, a revolution of the mind began. This was the birth of philosophy, which literally means love of wisdom. Early thinkers like Thales, Anaximander, and Heraclitus looked at the world and sought rational explanations instead of divine ones. Thales proposed that everything was made of water, not that the sea was the realm of Poseidon. They began to use logic, observation, and reason to understand the cosmos. They weren't just telling stories. They were building theories. This was a radical shift from accepting myth as truth to actively seeking truth through inquiry. This new philosophical movement didn't just ignore the gods. It directly challenged them. Philosophers like Xenophanes famously criticized the traditional depiction of the gods. He pointed out the absurdity of gods who lied, stole, and committed adultery. He argued, if cattle and horses and lions had hands, and could paint and create works of art like men, horses would draw the forms of the gods, like horses, and cattle like cattle. He was saying that we had created the gods in our own flawed image. He proposed the idea of a single, non-anthropomorphic god, an entity far removed from the petty squabbles of Olympus. Then came Plato, one of the most influential thinkers in all of history. He took this criticism to another level. In his famous work, The Republic Asterisk, Plato argued for an ideal society ruled by In this society, the traditional myths of Hesiod and Homer would be censored. Why? Because he believed these stories of gods behaving badly were a terrible influence, especially on children. How can you teach virtue, he asked, when the gods themselves are vengeful, lustful, and deceitful? Plato sought a higher, purer form of truth, a world of forms, perfect and unchanging ideals that existed beyond our messy physical world. For him, the mythological gods were poor, distorted copies of true divinity and justice. So we see this incredible journey in Greek thought, from a universe explained by the chaotic family drama of the gods, to a cosmos understood through reason and logic. From the asterisk theogony asterisks, pantheon of ultra-human deities, to the philosopher's search for a more perfect, abstract truth. The myths never entirely went away, of course. They remained a powerful cultural force. But philosophy opened up a new path, one that encouraged humanity to look not to the heavens for answers, but within their own capacity for reason. This tension between mythos and logos, between story and reason, is a legacy that has shaped Western civilization ever since. It's the ongoing conversation about how we find meaning, order, and truth in a vast and often chaotic universe. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Greece. We're going to uncover the surprising connections between ancient Israel and Persia and witness the birth of an idea that would change everything. Monotheism. Have you ever wondered where the concept of a single, all-powerful, and just God came from? It might seem like a simple question, but the answer is a complex and captivating story of cultural exchange, spiritual struggle, and philosophical evolution. For much of early human history, the world was seen as a bustling place filled with countless gods and spirits, each controlling a different aspect of nature or human life. The gods of the sky, the earth, the harvest, love, war. It was a crowded, divine stage. In this polytheistic landscape, the early Israelites were unique, but not entirely. They practiced what scholars call monolatry, worship of one primary god, Yahweh, while still acknowledging the existence of other deities. Think of it like being a fan of one specific sports team. Even though you know other teams exist, Yahweh was asterisk, their asterisk god, the God of Israel, bound to them by a special covenant. But the idea that he was the asterisk, only asterisk God, the one true God of the entire universe, that was a concept still waiting to be born, and its delivery would come from an unexpected direction. The mighty Persian Empire. Around the 6th century BCE, the kingdom of Judah was conquered by the Babylonians, and its people, including the religious and intellectual elite, were exiled to Babylon. This was a period of immense crisis and soul-searching. How could their powerful God, Yahweh, have allowed this to happen? Was he not as strong as the Babylonian gods? It was during this exile that the Israelites encountered a new, powerful force, the Persians. And with the Persians came a revolutionary religious idea, born from the mind of a prophet named Zoroaster, or Zarathustra. Zoroastrianism was unlike anything the world had seen before. At its heart was a radical concept: cosmic dualism. Zoroaster taught that the universe was a grand battlefield, the stage for an epic struggle between two opposing forces. On one side was Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, the creator of all that is good, orderly, and light. On the other was Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit, the source of all evil, chaos, and darkness. This wasn't just a squabble between petty deities. It was a fundamental clash of principles that defined existence itself. Humans were not just spectators in this cosmic war. They were active participants. Every choice, every thought, every action aligned you with either the forces of good or the forces of evil. This idea that human beings have free will and a moral responsibility to choose good over evil was groundbreaking. It transformed religion from a system of rituals meant to appease fickle gods into a deeply personal ethical framework. When Cyrus the Great of Persia conquered Babylon, he famously freed the Jewish exiles and allowed them to return to their homeland. But they didn't return unchanged. The decades spent in proximity to Persian thought had left a profound mark. Jewish thinkers, grappling with their own theological crisis, were exposed to these powerful Zoroastrian ideas. The cosmic battle between good and evil, the concept of a final judgment, the resurrection of the dead, and the eventual triumph of good. Slowly, a new synthesis began to emerge. The idea of Yahweh, the God of Israel, began to expand. He wasn't just the strongest God among many. He was the asterisk, only asterisk God. The other gods weren't just weaker. They didn't exist at all. They were illusions. Or perhaps manifestations of a singular evil force opposing the one true God. You can see this evolution happening right in the texts of the Hebrew Bible. Earlier texts speak of other gods, while later texts, written during or after the exile, are staunchly monolithic. The prophet Isaiah, for example, famously declares, "I am the Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me there is no God." This new absolute monotheism also absorbed the ethical urgency of Zoroastrianism. God wasn't just powerful. He was fundamentally asterisk, good asterisk, and just evil wasn't an arbitrary act of a mischievous deity. It was an opposing force that God and humanity must struggle against. This raised a new, profound question that we still wrestle with today. If God is all good and all powerful, why does evil exist? This is the classic problem of evil, and its roots lie in this ancient fusion of Israelite and Persian thought. Zoroastrianism provided a compelling answer. Evil exists because of a separate, destructive entity, but its reign is temporary. The cosmic battle will eventually end with the victory of Ahura Mazda. This concept of a final, eschatological victory profoundly influenced Jewish thought, leading to the development of apocalyptic ideas of final judgment, a messianic figure who would lead the forces of good and the ultimate establishment of God's kingdom on earth. Sound familiar? These concepts would later become central pillars of both Christianity and Islam. So the image of a single universal and just God, locked in a struggle against a force of cosmic evil who judges humanity, based on their ethical choices and promises, a final victory for good. This powerful paradigm was unborn in a vacuum. It was forged in the crucible of history, through the encounter of two ancient peoples, Israel and Persia. The crisis of the Babylonian exile created the question, and the radical dualism of Zoroaster provided the framework for an answer. From the monolatry of ancient Israel to the cosmic dualism of Zoroaster, a new kind of religion was born. It was a religion with a narrative, a history with a beginning, a middle, and a climatic end. It was a religion that placed ethics and individual choice at its very core. This evolution gave birth to the Abrahamic religions as we know them today, shaping the moral and philosophical landscape of billions of people across the globe. It's a powerful reminder that ideas are travelers, crossing borders and cultures, and that sometimes the greatest leaps in human understanding happen at the crossroads of civilizations. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the history of ideas. Today, we're embarking on a journey through time, exploring a story that is both epic and deeply personal. The twilight of the old gods and the quiet, persistent echo of their world in our own. Picture a world alive with divinity. Every river had its spirit, every forest its guardian, and the sky was a canvas for epic tales, played out by gods and goddesses. This was the world of paganism, a rich tapestry of beliefs that saw the sacred in every aspect of nature and human life. From the Norse sagas of Odin and Thor to the philosophical schools of Athens worshipping Athena, from the Celtic druids in misty groves to the vibrant festivals for Isis in Egypt, the divine wasn't a distant concept. It was a neighbor, a force you could feel in the wind and sea and the stars. But empires rise and fall, and with them entire worldviews. The rise of monotheistic religions, particularly Christianity within the Roman Empire, marked a profound shift. The old gods were gradually reframed, not as benevolent forces of nature, but as demons or empty idols. Temples were repurposed or destroyed, sacred groves were cut down, and festivals were either banned or absorbed into new religious calendars. This wasn't just a change in belief. It was the systematic disenchantment of the world. The transition was complex, sometimes peaceful, often coercive. For the everyday person, it meant letting go of traditions that had guided their ancestors for generations. The world, once teeming with 1,000 gods, was now governed by one. The vibrant, chaotic, and often very human pantheons were replaced by a singular, transcendent divinity. Yet, a belief system that has shaped humanity for millennia doesn't simply vanish. It goes underground. While the public practice of paganism faded, its spirit found refuge in the shadows, kept alive by those who weren't ready to let go of the old magic. These were the mystical traditions that became the hidden streams flowing beneath the surface of official culture. Think of Hermeticism, born in Hellenistic Egypt, which blended Greek philosophy with Egyptian magic. Its texts spoke of a divine mind, the all, and taught that by understanding the cosmos, one could achieve a form of divinity themselves, as above, so below. This wasn't about worshipping a pantheon, but about understanding the divine principles woven into the fabric of reality. Then there was Gnosticism, a fascinating and diverse set of beliefs that flourished in the early Christian era. Gnostics saw the material world as flawed, created not by a perfect God, but by a lesser, ignorant entity. For them, salvation came through gnosis, secret, intuitive knowledge that allowed the divine spark within each person to escape the material prison and return to the true, spiritual source. They were the ultimate spiritual rebels of their time. And of course, we have alchemy. On the surface, it was about turning lead into gold. But for true alchemists, the laboratory was a metaphor for the soul. The great work, the magnum opus, wasn't just about chemical transformation. It was about spiritual purification and the integration of opposites within oneself to achieve a state of wholeness and enlightenment. The alchemist's quest for the philosopher's stone was a deeply personal journey of transformation, a perfect echo of the pagan emphasis on personal experience and inner divinity. These traditions, along with folk magic, local superstitions, and the whispered tales of fae and nature spirits, kept the embers of an enchanted worldview glowing through the centuries. They preserved the idea that the divine wasn't just out there in a distant heaven, but also in here, within the human soul and in the patterns of the natural world. Fast forward to the modern era. The age of reason and the scientific revolution seemed to deliver the final blow to enchantment. The universe was now seen as a giant clockwork machine, governed by impersonal laws. But humans have a deep-seated need for meaning, mystery, and a sense of connection to something larger than themselves. And so, the old streams began to surface again, often in the most unexpected places. One of the most powerful modern echoes of these ancient traditions is in psychology, particularly the work of Carl Jung. Jung was deeply versed in alchemy and Gnosticism. He saw the old gods not as external beings, but as archetypes, primordial patterns within the collective unconscious of all humanity. The warrior, the wise old man, the great mother. These weren't just characters and myths. They are psychic forces that shape our lives, our dreams, and our Jung's process of individuation, the journey to becoming a whole, integrated self, is a direct psychological parallel to the alchemical great work. He gave us a new language to talk about the gods within. Art and literature also became a sanctuary for the exiled gods. The Romantic poets of the 19th century rebelled against the cold logic of industrialization by celebrating nature, emotion, and the sublime. They saw divinity in a sunset, in a storm, in the untamed wilderness. Later, fantasy writers like J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, though devout Christians, built entire worlds steeped in pagan mythology, filled with elves, dwarves, and ancient, earthbound magic. They re-enchanted our imaginations, reminding us of a world where trees could talk and mountains held ancient power. And now, in our so-called space age, we see a full-blown spiritual renaissance. The rise of modern paganism and Wicca is a direct attempt to reclaim and reconstruct the earth-centered traditions of old. People are once again celebrating the turning of the seasons, honoring gods and goddesses of nature, and finding sacredness in the tangible world around them. But the echo is even broader. Think about the way we talk about the universe. When an astrophysicist like Carl Sagan said, "We are made of star stuff," isn't that a profoundly spiritual statement? It is a scientific fact that carries the weight of mystical insight. Hermetic principle of as above, so below, written in the language of cosmology. Our search for extraterrestrial life, our awa, at the images from the James Webb Telescope, it's a modern form of a search for connection and wonder in the vast cosmos. Even our environmental movements carry a spiritual undertone. The concept of Mother Earth or Gaia is a powerful, modern myth that personifies the planet as a living, interconnected entity that we must respect and protect. This isn't so different from the ancient belief in nature, spirits, and earth goddesses. It's pagan spirituality repackaged for an age facing ecological crisis. So, did paganism ever truly die, or did it simply change its clothes? The story suggests that the human need for an enchanted world, a world of meaning, mystery, and immanent divinity is too powerful to be extinguished. It adapted, hid, and re-emerged in the languages of psychology, art, and even science. The gods may no longer have temples of stone, but they have found new homes in our psyche, our art, and our ever-expanding understanding of the cosmos. The world is, and perhaps always has been, whispering its secrets to those who are willing to listen. For millennia, humanity has crafted stories of powerful gods, celestial beings who shaped the cosmos, sculpted mountains, and breathed life into the first humans. We've built towering temples, composed soaring hymns, and dedicated our lives to these divine creators. We see ourselves as their creation, made in their image. But what if we've had it backwards this whole time? What if the gods are, in fact, made in our image? This isn't to say that faith or spirituality isn't real. Far from it. The feelings of awe, reverence, and connection are profoundly human. But let's embark on a thought experiment together. Consider the gods of ancient Greece. You have Zeus, the powerful, often unfaithful king of the gods, wrestling with power and desire. You have his proud and jealous wife. Ares, the embodiment of brutal warfare, and Athena, the personification of wisdom and strategy. Do these figures sound like distant, unknowable cosmic forces, or do they sound a lot like us? They are archetypes of human ambition, love, rage, and intellect, magnified to a divine scale. The Greeks, a people who cherished philosophy, drama, and human achievement, created a pantheon that reflected their own complex society. They looked at their own souls, with all their virtues and flaws, and projected them onto the heavens. This pattern isn't unique to the Greeks. Journey to ancient Egypt, and you'll find gods intrinsically linked to the rhythms of their world. Ra, the sun god, who sailed across the sky each day and journeyed through the underworld each night, mirrored the predictable, life-giving cycle of the sun along the Nile. Osiris, the god of the afterlife and resurrection, embodied the Egyptian obsession with life after death and the agricultural cycle of planting and harvest. Their gods were reflections of their environment and their deepest hopes and fears about mortality. In the fierce and unforgiving landscapes of Scandinavia, the Norse gods were hardy, battle-ready figures like Thor and Odin, embodying courage and a certain fatalism in the face of a harsh world. Their gods were warriors and survivors, just like the people who worship them. It seems that wherever we look, the gods we create tell us more about ourselves than about the cosmos. They are magnificent mirrors. When we felt small and powerless against the might of nature, the crash of thunder, the flash of lightning, we imagined a powerful sky god, a Thor or a Zeus, wielding these forces. By giving a name and a face to the storm, we made the terrifyingly chaotic feel a little more understandable, perhaps even relatable. When we grappled with the profound injustice of death, we conceived of elaborate afterlives, ruled by deities like Osiris or Hades, creating a system of order to make sense of the ultimate unknown. Our gods are the stories we tell ourselves to navigate a world that is often bewildering and overwhelming. This brings us to a beautiful, cyclical truth: gods make men and men make gods. Let's unpack that. In a very real sense, the asterisk idea, of the gods shapes humanity. The moral codes, the rituals, the social structures, and the art inspired by these divine concepts have guided civilizations for thousands of years. The Ten Commandments, the Code of Hammurabi, the concept of karma, these divine frameworks have profoundly influenced human behavior and society. The belief in a higher power has inspired incredible acts of charity, breathtaking art, and the courage to endure unimaginable hardship. In this way, the gods we've created circle back to create us, shaping our cultures and our individual character. But the creative act begins with us. It starts with the human soul's innate need for meaning, for purpose, for connection to something larger than itself. We are storytelling animals. We don't just experience the world, we interpret it. We look at the chaos and see patterns. We feel complex emotions: love, grief, hope, fear, and we seek to understand them. The sacred, the divine, is the grandest story we've ever told ourselves. It's a canvas upon which we paint our deepest psychological and emotional truths. The figures of gods, angels, demons, and spirits are personifications of our own inner landscapes. The battle between good and evil playing out in heavenly realms is often a reflection of the moral struggle within each human heart. So, where does this leave us today, in a world increasingly shaped by science and secularism? Have we outgrown our need for gods? I don't think so. The impulse to create them, to find meaning and project our ideals, is still very much alive. It has simply changed its form. For some, the divine is no longer a bearded man in the sky, but can be found in the elegant equations of physics that describe the universe, a kind of cosmic intelligence woven into the fabric of reality itself. The awe that a scientist feels when uncovering a new law of nature is not so different from the awe a mystic feels in contemplation. For others, humanity itself has become the new sacred object. We look to heroes, innovators, and artists as our modern-day saints. We deify ideology's progress, freedom, equality, and build our societies around these new sacred values. Think about the stories we tell in our blockbuster movies. Aren't superheroes our modern pantheon? Superman, an almost Christ-like figure of ultimate goodness and self-sacrifice. sent from the heavens to save humanity. Batman, a mortal man driven by trauma and a fierce sense of justice, a dark god of vengeance and protection. They embody our highest ideals and our deepest fears, just as the old gods did. The eternal cycle continues. We are still creating gods in our own image. This perspective doesn't diminish the sacred. It deepens Italiano. It makes it intensely personal. It suggests that the kingdom of heaven isn't just out there, but also in here, within the depths of the human psyche. The sacred is a mirror reflecting our own potential for creation, for destruction, for boundless love and profound wisdom. When we look into that mirror, we see the faces of our gods. But if we look closer, we might just see ourselves. We see the messy, beautiful, terrifying, and brilliant face of humanity, striving to understand itself. And that act of striving, of questioning and creating, is, in itself, a profoundly sacred act. The search for God is, and has always been, the search for the soul of humanity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through ideas.